Hi, class. Welcome to week 4, Human Rights Policing, connecting human rights to policing. And so obviously read the introduction to the Canvas, paying attention when everything is due. Of course, just a reminder, make sure that your reply posts are just as informative, as elaborate, as critical as your original post, adding something new, clever, interesting, or critical to the discussion. Um, and so the topics this week are basically human rights policing social interactions, the evolution of human rights, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, the history of policing, and examining the prison industrial complex, something that we're going to look further into later this semester. And so you're reading chapter 2 of my book, my father's book, Marina's book on human rights policing, reimagining law enforcement in the 21st century. And so here the chapter starts with cops of the world unite, but under human rights policing, and why it's important for police officers to unite under this umbrella of human rights. I think no matter what part of the political spectrum you belong to, whether you are far right-winger or far left-winger or somewhere in between or nowhere on the spectrum whatsoever, that we can all find a sense of solidarity and community based upon this notion of human rights. Again, that I stress, while human rights has been articulated among the human species, again, for the first time in 1948, human rights has never been meaningfully practiced in any human civilization or in our society or in any institution, especially all hierarchical institutions, because hierarchy always breeds power and domination, whether it's a government, a religious organization, or a university. You see hierarchy, and in hierarchy, you see power and domination, and people oppressed, marginalized, and subordinated from that power. And so it's important then to really look at what human rights means. And if we are going to reimagine policing, perhaps we have to reimagine policing from being primarily an institution of social control into an institution that protects the human rights of the people, especially the most vulnerable people in our society. And that is the exact type of radical social transformation that I seek with all of our social institutions. So why not start with law enforcement and policing? And so I talk about human rights and how it's always been more about bark than bite. And so it's words without meaning, bark without bite. And you can talk about how I've discussed this evolution of human rights. Obviously, people have had rights before, but as I've said before, those rights are usually given to people because of their access to the divinity or tradition, the rule by divine right, traditional type of authority that largely existed in pre-modern times, which still kind of largely still exists today. Although the two main types of authority that we see is this, still remnants of this traditional authority from pre-modern times, dating back to feudalism and before, to the rise of this kind of rational, bureaucratic type of authority where people are able to attain power and authority through their attachment to a hierarchical institution. And so I talk about this idea of human rights and this and what exactly this means and what it doesn't mean. Then we break down to, okay, well, so what does human rights have to do with like actual police interactions with members of the community? And here I talk about, along with my father, the 3 types of human rights policing interactions. And then not only do I talk about, the theoretical approach to the 3 different types of human rights that can be applied to police interactions with community members, but I have 3 examples from my father, who talks about his real life, real world examples from being a police officer in the New Orleans Police Department. So I think, that his experience is largely invaluable. Although my father is an extremely intelligent and well-read man, I believe that his experiences with 30 years of policing in the New Orleans Police Department really gives him not only the knowledge attained from books, but also the experiences firsthand from, being down in New Orleans and being a police officer right there in the community, interacting with people. So I think those examples can be very powerful there. And so then I move on to the evolution of human rights and how we got to the 1948 United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. And also, just as important, the International Convention on Civil and Human Rights. And then I provide a summary of some of the main human rights. And then the chapter ends where I was able to get police officers who I know, some right there in the local Wisconsin community, who talk about their perspectives of human rights when it comes to their jobs. So I wanted to bring in some outside people, some police officers who I taught in my human rights policing class that I offered to police officers throughout the Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the United States, how they understand human rights and have applied it as police officers in Wisconsin and Minnesota and beyond. And then your week 4 discussion board, I ask you to respond to some of the following items. And one is understanding human rights policing. And so, this is all stemming from your reading and understanding of the book, where you'll talk about your understanding of human rights and how it's applied. You'll talk about the 3 types of human rights policing social interactions, and you can kind of give your own examples of that to show that you completely understand it. And you'll talk about, in your opinion, which type of policing interaction do you think is most challenging for police officers to implement and why? Then 3, we'll talk about the possession paradox. So where I explain this idea that, we all possess human rights, and so you can't take them away, but you can certainly deny people their enjoyment of human rights. And so really take a close look at that possession paradox, and think about some real life scenarios where this possession paradox might really be evident in these police interactions. So I think that'll be a very thoughtful item there in your discussion post. 4, you'll talk a little bit about this evolution of human rights and your understanding of it, what major shifts or events contributed to this development of universal human rights. And then, of course, obviously, you're going to talk about the Holocaust and, World War II. But I mean, look at what's going on today. I mean, we have some massive human rights abuses that are going on in the Ukraine and in Gaza, as well as in other places like Iraq, Somalia, and especially Yemen, as the bombs and the terror seem to never subside, and the destruction seems to never subside, and the violation of human rights completely, human rights is completely disregarded. And so, which is just further evidence that human rights has never really been meaningfully applied among humans in any really aspect of our social world. And so very important to talk about that evolution of human rights. And still, even though, many years and decades have passed since that 1948 Declaration of Human Rights, we haven't realized human rights in any meaningful way in real, actual practice. Will that ever change? Well, maybe classes like this and maybe wonderful students like you can help engineer such change. So 5 is the application to policing. So applying these human rights to actual policing. So you're going to reflect on our argument that we present through the book, that or at least in chapter 2, that human rights goes beyond treating people with respect. It's not about that. Treating people with respect it's kind of how it's supposed to be done anyway. That really has little to do with human rights. Everyone's supposed to treat each other with respect. Although respect is earned, we give people the benefit of the doubt and respect them unless they give us a reason not to. But nonetheless, police officers should always treat community members with respect. So it needs to go way beyond simple respect. And most people would rather be disrespected and not go to jail than respected and go to jail. Who wants to be in a cage of torture and despair, locked away to suffer in the most inhumane ways possible, especially in the American prisons? And so you'll apply that, and how might these 3 types of human rights policing social interaction be practically applied in real world policing scenarios? And so, again, all of these kinds of theories need to be actually applied in real practice. Otherwise, what are we doing? Again, the point isn't to simply understand the world, it's to change it. And finally, the item 6 is challenges and critiques. Identify potential challenges or criticisms that could arise from implementing a human rights policing approach, and how could these challenges be addressed. And you want to be critical of me, you want to be critical of my father, you want to be critical of what's written in the book, give some pushback. That's how we create new ideas. It's not all about agreeing each other and singing kumbaya. It's about exchanging creative and innovative and new ideas to make the world a better place and to create a world where human rights is more important than anything else. And so please engage with your peers, make responses with insights that expand our knowledge on these discussion boards. And you can use external, examples, your own personal experience to draw from to really enrich that type of conversation. Anyway, keep going strong. Class is going swimmingly well. I appreciate all of you. Keep up the hard work, and always email for anything. And we'll read chapter 3 next week, and we'll have another hopefully exciting and stimulating discussion board. Thank you very much. Cheers.